Hello and good evening and welcome to another Tuesday Night Live, slightly later than usual here in the Holding Block. Thank you so much for joining us. We had to push back the time. Sometimes these things happen, but we need to make sure that we get our interview with our special guest. And tonight we do have another special guest. I'm very excited to welcome to the Holding Block Mr. Ken Okoroafor, and he's going to be talking to us about growing your money. How do you feel maybe as an entrepreneur or just as an individual when it comes to your own money? Now, you know, if you've been watching these shows before, every now and again, I will get an expert in to help us think about the best practices when it comes to dealing with our money, saving our money, investing our money, and growing our money. And we are in very safe hands tonight with Ken because that is his raison d'etre. That is his real focus. He wants to help people become financially independent. And if you need to hear his credentials, let me tell you this now. He became financially independent at the age of 34. He's a chartered accountant, and he holds an MBA from the University of Cambridge. He has over 12 years experience as a chief executive financial officer in investment in business in London. And he took the leap this year in April 2020 from having jobs and doing his investment coaching as a side hustle to actually being full-time in what he's doing with his wife as his business partner. So if you haven't heard of Ken, if you haven't heard of his business, The Humble Penny, then you're in for a treat tonight. And you can watch some of these highlights to see a little taste of what we're in store for in tonight's show.
Today we're going to explore a dozen side hustle ideas that you can explore today yourself. I've tried to make this to be quite balanced, so you have online ideas as well as offline ideas that you can explore, okay? There are two things you should make sure you grab as part of this video. Number one is a post I did called 85 Ways to Make Extra Money. This explores 85 ideas that you should definitely check out. The second, if you're into online ideas, is I've done a really detailed post, and I'll put a link to that as well in the link below, called 27 Legit Ideas You Can Explore Online, okay? So feel free to check that out for online ideas that you can absolutely explore and start today. My name's Ken of the Humble Penny and Financial Joy Academy, and what we do on this channel is to give you the tips, the insights, the hacks for you to work towards a dream life of financial independence and money joy. So stick with me as I walk you through these 12 best side hustle ideas.
Welcome, Ken. How are you, sir? Thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you?
Great. I'm great. I'm so excited. Really, really pleased to be here. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. I'll tell you what, I don't know if you are familiar with the movie The Matrix. I like to keep it real in terms of how I'm feeling. There's the Matrix 2. I don't know if you've seen that one. There's a scene where there's like a million Agent Smiths, right? And they all jump on top of him. That's been my day today, right? So really? I feel like I need the
battle, man.
Yeah. Literally, this is like, so today hasn't been like the best day, but I'm here. I'm happy to be presenting this show.
You showed up.
This is it, and sometimes you just have to fight. You just have to push them off, push off the Agent Smiths, and come with it. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, you know what? That is some credentials that you have. So.
No, thank you, man. You kind of made me look really important now.
Well, naturally you are. If you're in the Holding Block, of course, VIPs only in the Holding Block. So
no, I appreciate it. Excited.
Absolutely fine. No, look, you're doing great things. You know, you with the Humble Penny, and what I love about my guests is they are, and I've said this before, but they are not advisors. An advisor is someone who's telling you they haven't quite lived it. They are mentors. They're people who've actually gone through it. They know the ropes, and they're telling others. So I know that that's your story, but there are people out there that haven't really heard of you, or maybe don't know much about your story. So I want you to just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to develop the Humble Penny, etc. But yeah, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so guys, so I'm Ken. I kind of look at my journey in two halves. Okay, so I'm a first generation immigrant to the UK. I moved here in July 1998. And I like to tell that story because it's very important. for people to understand the context. So when they see success or levels of success, most people focus on that success, but don't actually look at where someone's come from. So for me, I look at my life journey so far in two halves. So over the last 20 or so years, I've had the first 10 years where I essentially spend that period trying to survive as an immigrant in the UK, first generation, with my family. And a lot of that meant I lived life pretty much on the ground and trying to find my way. At the same time, trying to go through schooling and doing what most normal people try to do to get by. And the next 10 years, I spent a lot of that life trying to flourish, trying to essentially thrive. So I was going beyond survival, but focusing more so on thriving. That thriving involved engaging a number of strategies on my journey. One of them was career development and really pursuing my career aggressively and kind of growing and trying to get to the really high level of the kind of executive role to make a decent six-figure salary, to kind of change my life that way. And parallel to that, other strategies involve me investing and almost outsourcing money making to assets, so that assets can start to do the work for me. Something I hadn't seen a great deal of people around me doing from a family perspective and things like that. So one of those was investing in through the stock market and investing in property and things like that. And parallel to that, exploring business assets, side hustles, starting my own offline businesses, doing business ventures with family members, things like that. All those elements together were all part of a journey that I set off together with my wife in 2009 towards us becoming financially independent. So we essentially began the journey of optimizing our lives for financial independence. So the humble penny was therefore created in 2017 as a way for me to start to tell the story of my life journey, because I hadn't seen many people like me, Black, male, African, family man, who essentially were telling their money stories, speaking about their money journeys. I wanted to use the humble penny as the platform to begin to speak about money in a really approachable way, in a way that people who look like me or people who identify with my journey or find that journey something that they can almost point to as something they can relate to, those people, I wanted to speak to them to help them begin to get on that journey themselves to change the game in their own lives financially. So yeah, that's kind of how the humble penny kind of started.
Brilliant. I love that. And I think it comes back to the value of the individual story, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we can kind of take for granted, maybe there are other people out there, people who are viewers of the Harning block of Tuesday Night Live. They've seen people like yourself, people like Crystal McGilvery, who's out there doing her thing, people like Emmanuel Asuquo, who's out there doing his thing, and people might feel, oh, there's not really much space for you, but like you said, you have a story.
Oh yeah.
Your story is important, and I love that. I love that.
It's critical because, and what you said there is actually really interesting, because what you find is that the more people are telling their stories, the better, actually, because it creates more abundance. Although the small-minded person would think that creates competition, and that creates almost you're having to share a fixed pie. Whereas actually, the way I look at it is you're actually, because everybody's so different. Everybody has their own voice, their own story, their own vision. Their own vision, very important. And by everybody telling their own stories in their own voices, you essentially create abundance in a unique way. And that's how I.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it is very much a mindset thing. As you said, it really does depend on the way you look at it. So, for example, every day there are people getting involved in drop shipping, for example, just to choose one thing. Whereas there are many people out there that are saying, oh, drop shipping is finished. Nobody's making money from drop shipping, right? So it's interesting when it comes to money and mindset. So one of the things that I wonder is, I know from your own life journey, as well as one of the things you help advise people, is that whole kind of living within your means and saving a large amount. Like you saved, like, was it over 50% of your own salary?
At the height of it. But that was driven by the fact that a big part of our journey has been about making more money. We don't talk about making more money a lot in this country, and I'm a big fan of making more money because you can create a lot more options in your life if you made more, but provided the mindset shift is around simple living. So almost not doing what the masses do, which is to essentially inflate your lifestyle the more you have this perception that you are becoming more wealthy over time, but to really keep that lifestyle quite simple, but to then kind of up your savings rate and things like that on the back of doing different things that actually make you more money over time.
That must be a very difficult thing to deal with, though, right? In terms of, there's a lot of pressure, though. You know, it takes a certain mindset to be able to feel that pressure, know it exists, and think differently. How do you kind of coach people? Because I know you do a lot of coaching and you do group sessions as well. What practical steps do you have? There's going to be people watching this that feel that pressure. They know what it feels like to want to have the labels or whatever it is. It might not even be things that are visible to others. Maybe keeping up with the Joneses, you know, something as simple as that. How do you begin with helping people to develop that mindset to say, okay, look, you need to live within your means and you will benefit in the long run? The counter to that is, I only live once, right? You know, and let me just live and enjoy myself now. What do you say to that?
So what I say to that is a big part of this journey, which a lot of people almost miss, is this focus on self-awareness. Okay, so really understanding at the core who you are, why you exist, what your core motivations are, and understanding that this journey is your journey. A lot of people focus too much on the noise out there, which is them being directed by what other people think, what other people feel. For me, a lot of this journey with my wife, and I have to always mention my wife because this is a joint thing. We're married and we're a family and we've built wealth together as a family. Big part of our journey was understanding who we are individually and understanding what we are setting out to achieve. So a lot of people really get pushed around, not physically, but just by what almost their lives have been dictated by other people, by mere virtue of the fact that a lot of people don't strongly understand who they are, what makes them tick. So I'll give you an example with me as an example. So for quite a while in my life, I bought things that were too expensive. Like I bought a Cartier watch, I'd wear a Rolex watch. I was doing that because I was perhaps seeking the approval of other people. I had friends at the time who valued things that made them come across as though they were doing well. I drove a really expensive car because the car made me look like I was doing well. When in actual fact, what I should have been doing is what I had through my career started to spot and notice amongst the people who I knew were really wealthy in their lives. Okay, like for example, I had a boss who I'd go to his house. His house would be worth about 9 to 10 million pounds, but the car he would be driving would be a Renault Zoe. A Renault Zoe you can buy for like, I don't know, $4,000 or $5,000 or something, right? Whereas I had people, with my life, as I mentioned to you many years ago, I didn't have a lot in the bank, but yet I still had a car that made me look like I was doing very well. This is the culture, this culture of expectations. We're expected to look like we are doing very well in life. When in actual fact, the more I focus on simplifying my life, say for example, my watch, which I wear all the time, this watch cost me £49, works amazingly well. In fact, someone saw me and said, "Hey, Ken, that watch looks really expensive." I said, you see, this is the point. The more you've chosen to go the other way, is the more people then start to take notice and go, well, actually, this choice of you designing your life to be really, really simple is one that really sets you apart. You know, so for example, I worked for many years as a finance director, as a chief financial officer, and things like that. And people would see me driving my car, which is a Nissan, and say, well, like, hold on, something doesn't seem right. You're a chief financial officer. What are you doing driving a Nissan? I'm expected to be driving a Range Rover because I'm supposedly doing well because, you know, I'm somebody who has maybe been in executive positions, which I have. So this almost conflict between what people expect and what you actually produce in your life as almost the fruit of your life's work is actually a really important one. It's one that I help people try to identify, help them get to a place where they start to really see their lives from their own view, not from the view of other people. Okay, because the minute you can do that, you then start to plot your own life the way you want it to go. So the house you live in, like whose idea was living in that house, the area you live in, whose idea was living in that area. How else could you choose to do life such that it's radically different, but such that you are achieving your life outcomes because you've designed it that way? Okay, life then becomes a design problem. Because then you're saying to yourself, now I understand what my key motivations are. I'm no longer being driven by other people. And by the way, this takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. That's what I'm telling you. You then start to make decisions that matter to you. So for example, are you choosing to optimize your life for a particular type of lifestyle? Say, for example, I chose to leave my job in the city because I want to spend more time with my kids. My boys are growing up, they're 7 and 5 years old. For me, I saw that as a better use of a higher proportion of my time. That's a life design choice and a life design outcome. And that life design outcome has only come about because at some point I spotted a life design problem. And for me, solving that life design problem is what's led to where we are. But to even get to the point of spotting a life design problem came from a place of high self-awareness. And so I see that as a thing that most people don't have. They don't focus initially on understanding who they are and really developing that self-awareness, because that then gives them that laser focus on independence, that laser focus on doing life radically different to most people.
I absolutely love that. That is fantastic. Laser focus, being who you are, knowing who you are, and just, I would say, I guess, trimming off the fat, right? So rather than just appearing as though everything is fine and you've got lots of money, actually, and I guess, I'm Nigerian. I'm assuming you know what that feels like, right? Okay, so we could talk about Nigeria now because we know when it comes to the parties, when it comes to the weddings, let's change the dollar bills, let's get the dollar bills.
Yep.
Let's spray money and make sure that people see that we look good. Actually, you have to have the car, you have to have the house, you have to have, and that focus. I know it's not just Nigerians, of course, but understanding that kind of pressure is a very real thing. It can be a very real thing for people to then think, who am I in the middle of this? Okay, this is what's happening. It's happening all around me, but who am I in the midst of this?
You see, it's funny you say that because there's also a real misunderstanding of what wealth is, because a lot of us, and this is the projection of wealth, is that you have a really nice car and you have a really nice house, even though that house has a ton of debt on it, and you have really nice shiny things. Okay, that's the projection of wealth. You see that projection of wealth everywhere, whether you're on Instagram, whether you're reading the newspapers, whether you're watching the TV, whether you're following the latest celebrity culture, whatever it is, that projection of wealth is very real. Okay, and that causes people to have a great deal of pressure. Right? But choosing and almost educating yourself on what wealth really means for you matters a lot. This is why I keep saying this is a very individual journey. Understanding what that means for you matters. So for me, for example, wealth is the fact that I can actually wake up when I want and get up, like I got up this morning, got my 2 boys ready whilst my wife was kind of packing their school bags and stuff. I drove them to school, talked to them along the way about life, talked to them about what daddy does, talked to them about what we do as a family, spoke about life generally and things that we're seeing along the drive, dropped them off, walked them to school, took them to the front of the gate, and then left them. And then later on, picked them up at 3 p.m. life for me, wealth for me from that perspective is having my time and having the option to actually do what I want, life the way we want to do it as a family unit. See? So I had to define wealth for me, and therefore created that almost worked towards creating the life that actually worked for us. Whereas most people's understanding of wealth is around showing things and seeking the approval of other people, but deep down, not living, not really finding fulfillment and living the life that they truly ultimately find interesting, fun, exciting, and all those things.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because when we really hone in on it and think about probably the most wealthy people in the world, you would never know that they were wealthy just by looking at them.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, you could probably just walk past someone on the street who was really, really wealthy. You would never know.
But they can choose to have 6 months off. They can choose to have a whole year off.
Yeah.
They can choose to go and live in another part of the country and operate from there. Because their assets are at work. Their assets are generating income for them. They can choose. They can basically they can choose to do life how they want. And from a cultural context, this is very important because picking us, I'm a Nigerian by heritage. We've been brought up that way naturally. We haven't like your parents don't bring you up saying to you, well, actually, you could actually design a life that works for you. That's not. No one tells you that. Like that's not what anyone teaches you. You have to go and seek out that idea for yourself. Ask yourself, what does this idea mean for me? What could it mean for my life? How could it radically change my life? Yeah. How could it actually do that for my life? That's something that we are naturally taught anywhere.
It's true. And I'm thinking now, how does this transfer over to business? Because obviously businesses are run by people and people have these same habits. So
I've got a lot to say on this subject. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, tell me, how do you help those people who they're entrepreneurs, they've decided to set up a business, but they have all of this mindset that they're bringing into their business. And we know naturally with business, there has to be debt involved, to the most part. There's usually good debt, sometimes there's bad debt. It really does depend on the business model, the industry, etc. But how do you deal with that? How do you deal with addressing that in terms of the mindset, from that mindset perspective, to help people make the right choices so that actually they're seeing it, like you said, from that kind of laser focused individual perspective, as opposed to how it should look? Because from what I know and the different entrepreneurs that I've worked with and the different people who I've spoke to them about their businesses, some people really are just kind of living behind a mask in terms of their business. Everything looks great in terms of what everybody sees, but actually behind closed doors, when you look at the numbers, it's not something that it's not something that will be shared. But yeah, how do you approach this with your clients?
So a lot of business people operate as though they're actually employees. So by that I mean a lot of business people actually just run a business almost as though they're running a business for running a business's sake, and there isn't a bigger ultimate goal for what the business exists to do. Okay, so let me explain what I mean. So whether you have got a great career, or whether you've got a side hustle, or whether you've got a business, all these various things are all levers, or should be levers, for an ultimate goal. Yeah. So I like to call that your North Star goal, the thing that you are ultimately trying to achieve. So the big mistake I see with a lot of people who run small and medium-sized businesses is that they are ultimately not seeing their business as a vehicle for change. They find themselves simply just running business, but are not working on things such as, how do I extract money tax efficiently enough for my business, with the ultimate focus on my North Star goal. That North Star goal is a good example of that, is you seeking and pursuing a life of financial independence. Yeah. So for example, me running the Humble Penny and running now Financial Joy Academy, is effectively a lifestyle business, because we knew that our North Star goal was us seeking out a life of financial independence. And the business acts as a way for us to pursue what we love. So from a kind of heart perspective, it's a big tick. But at the same time, it's something that generates us an income and gives us enough purpose in helping us have an impact in the world, whilst also helping us build our wealth. So the business exists as part of almost a family almost journey towards a particular outcome. So what I find with most people who run businesses is that they just run businesses as though they're doing a 9-to-5 job, but they do not use that business as a vehicle for change towards helping them achieve a particular outcome. I think you're muted, Lucy.
I'm muted. I'll tell you, that's one of those Agent Smiths that have been happening to so many different things. But that that particular outcome that you were speaking about, that focus, isn't that you can kind of take for granted. And again, I kind of work with people in terms of their business plans and their lean canvas, etc. You would think that that is something that should be planned for. But as you're talking, it seems that, is it despite business plans? Is it again kind of going back to the whole mindset thing that these issues arise, or how does it come about?
Oh, it just comes about because most people don't realize that they're actually on a money journey. Yeah. So for most, you might not know this, but for most people in this country, most people essentially live at a stage on the money journey where they are just making enough money to just get by. They pay their expenses, pay their bills, pay their debt, what have you. Yeah, just finance their current lifestyle, and that's it. They just get by. But for other people who are looking at life from the perspective of this money journey, understand that there are other possibilities ahead. So for me, for example, I knew that 10 years ago with my wife that we wanted to create a radically different life. And for us, it was a case of, well, how else could we begin to create that radically different life? What are the levers we could begin to pull for that to become a possibility? One for us was focusing on career, for example, career trajectory. Another was focusing on business and building, creating different businesses with family members. In my case, with my mum, my dad, my sisters, and with my wife, obviously, along that journey. Others was actually putting money in a different environment to let that money, therefore, then get to work and help us work 24/7 rather than working 8 to 10 hours per day, as you might do in a 9-to-5 job. So I think for a lot of people, it's that lack of consciousness that there is actually a money journey at work all the time. And you moving from this stage of the money journey towards that stage of the money journey, it's actually a conscious decision that takes a great deal of planning. It doesn't happen by accident. And you don't move from here to here doing life exactly how you have always done it. Something has to change. In fact, you have to become somebody else from this stage to this stage on the money journey. You can't possibly be the same person, because the skill sets that you need and the tool sets you need to go from here to here are radically different.
So I'm going to have to play the round of applause here.
I didn't even know you had that as a...
I love that answer, because it really does help. I'm a very visual person, and I love the fact that it does highlight a lot of things that people hear. People who are familiar with Bob Proctor and people who are similar to Bob Proctor will always talk about this paradigm shift of your understanding, and just realizing that actually if you want to be in a different place, you have to think differently to how you are in the place that you're currently in. And I think you've said that in a different way. So you talk about a money journey. And actually, if you want to shift from the place that you're in, you have to think differently in order to actually get to where you want to be. But it's a conscious thing. I love that.
It's entirely a conscious thing, because you have to change your life entirely. because there's this idea of wanting things without giving things up to get it. Like you're in dreamland if you think that's what's going to happen. To get something, you have to be willing to give other things up. That's just how it has to be a real trade. It has to be a trade-off. It might be a trade-off in your lifestyle, like I mentioned. It might be a trade-off of your time in pursuing more higher value activities that will help you get closer to that goal. I have this acronym that I use all the time, this POST, which for me is purpose. A lot of business people hopefully don't understand what I'm talking about here. This idea of starting off with a purpose, then moving up onto your objectives, then moving on to your strategy, and then moving on to your tactics. So let's be very exact here. So let's say your purpose, for example, might be to optimize your life. In my case, financial independence. Okay, your objective, keeping it really, really specific, would be that you want a pot of money or a net worth of between, say, of about £600,000, making this up. Or you might want net income from your investments or from your assets every single month of about £10,000 net. Okay, you set a very specific objective that's time bound over a period of time. Your strategy, the S part, is then you saying, well, actually, okay, so I've set that goal. I know when it's going to happen. What levers do I need to pull for that to happen? What do I need to do very differently to everybody else to accelerate that journey? Okay, so it could be you then, therefore, getting out there to kind of understand how money works, how money compounds and accelerates. So you might say, for example, my chosen vehicle is me investing through the stock market. Okay, you've chosen to do that. What assumptions are you making? Okay, my assumptions are that if I invested my money, I might generate a after inflation return of maybe 6 or 7%. If I do that and I get 7% return, what does it imply for how much I need to put into the machine for me to get to my goal in, say, 10 years' time, for example? If I do that and it implies £1,500 per month or £2,000 per month, if I put it into the machine, assuming an average return over time, if I don't hit it, what else could I be doing along the way to accelerate that journey? What other lever could I pull? Could I explore starting something online, like we've done, starting a blog, starting a YouTube channel, what have you? What else could I do? Could I explore a joint venture with somebody else? So you see that here now you're talking strategy, considering various pathways you could follow. And then tied to those strategies are specific tactics. So what could I do? So your tactics might be that you seek career progression. And your tactic might be that you're pursuing, say, I don't know, making this up, in my case, wanting to make enough of a high 6-figure salary because I knew I'd simplify my lifestyle. And if I did that, I would command a much higher savings rate. And if I commanded a much higher savings rate, that savings rate would get to work in this other machine, which is a part of my strategy. So overall, there is I like to call it a tool set at work. You're not just, in my mind, I can see it, but seeing it in my mind has come through kind of educating myself around what the possibilities could be in order for me to accelerate that journey towards achieving a set goal.
Excellent. Round of applause again. I'm going to have to give you a dragon punch as well for that.
I'm making some sense because sometimes I get carried away.
100%. And I love it because it's almost kind of, it's kind of giving an analogy of aspects of my journey. I love that kind of the pull the lever analogy you gave, because you set up the machine, you have your plan, and then you think, right, okay, what can I do to speed it up? What can I do to increase this area, maximize this area? But there's an analysis around a specific machine.
Yes.
And actually that is what is driving everything. And if something is broken, you know where to look and then how to address that side of it and then improve it. I love it.
And a big part of that analysis is what some might refer to as financial education. Some might take personal one-to-one coaching. Some might go to conferences. Some might buy courses. Or some might read books. Yeah. Because what you're doing there is you're really diving into the detail. This is because most people are not interested in detail because they're busy doing other things. The person who is really determined to see a different outcome over time goes into the detail. They make it a part of their business to seek out the detail.
Brilliant. I love it. Really love it. I wanted to kind of talk about this current situation that we're in terms of debt, in terms of loans, in terms of credit deficit, all of that good stuff. And as well, just for the viewers who are watching now, I'm going to give you a forewarning. If you want to add your comments, add your questions for Ken, type them into the chat. I will see them here. We'll pose them to Ken very soon. But yeah, feel free to type your questions in the comments section. And I'm seeing some of the comments. Thank you to Joyce and Paul and Oggs who are watching. And I've got another comment here. Joyce says she's currently listening to the audio book Richest Man in Babylon. Again, the very powerful book.
Yeah.
Very powerful book. But yes, I want to talk to you about debt. So especially at this time now, there are a lot of people out there that are on payment holidays, maybe mortgage holidays, etc. And in regards to business as well, there are a lot of businesses that have had help from the government. And I know naturally we can't go into specific detail. It's far too broad to go into what people should do. But are there any kind of general tips that you have for people regarding just this transition back into certain level of normality as the lockdown eases?
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd say about debt is to always remember that debt has a price. So a bit like going to Sainsbury's and buying something, everything has a price. Debt has its own price as well. It comes at a specific cost. And I think we very easily overlook the cost of money. And when you think about the cost of money as a business person, ultimately, for that debt to have been worth you taking on, it has to over time generate a return that far exceeds the cost of the money. Okay, so I think a general thought rather than a tip really is for people to really start to see money from that perspective. I know a lot of people are taking money on now, as taking on debt, because for a lot of people they're in a kind of a survival position. A lot of people are trying to save their businesses and so on, and that's understandable. But I think it's this focus on almost this might be quite controversial, but if you can't create a business that is not overly reliant on debt, then there should be quite a big question mark. Okay, because in the world we're living in now, with this sort of technology we have online, with the ways we can start to think about our business models, ways in which we can introduce elements to our business such that our business would generate an income, provided we've built sufficient and well-responsive sales systems. The ways you can do certain really interesting things now with business mean that a lot of businesses should really not be relying a great deal on debt if they created the right structures within their businesses. So a lot of businesses that are offline, for example, should be thinking a great deal about how to introduce an online element. And if you're introducing an online element to your business, you should then be asking yourself, how do I create an effective enough sales system such that my business is able to still generate an income without us even having to be there for that business to generate an income? In fact, I see that as a design problem. So if you're able to say, well, actually, okay, I've got an offline business and I want to introduce perhaps a subscription element to my business from an online perspective, how could you introduce that element to your business such that that aspect of your business could potentially be what helps you one day pay down the debt that you might have borrowed over this period of time? So I think a lot more people need to think more creatively about their businesses and about doing things radically differently. I was speaking to my sister, for example, who's running a program at the minute, which is all about sales systems, how you create sales systems that essentially even generate you an income such that that income pays for all the advertising you might be putting in to promote your business, and still over time generates enough profits for you whilst running in automation. This is a piece of knowledge that's out there that anyone who runs a business right now could start to think about how they might be able to apply this sort of thinking to their business. How do you think very differently about your business, such that you have a great deal of automation and an online element to your business, and it generates an income for you, and might even be something that helps you potentially pay down your business or personal debt or whatever it is you've got.
Brilliant. So thinking differently, analyzing the actual purpose of the debt, and I guess giving it a lifespan.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And just thinking about what's out there that's accessible to actually help refine your offering. I think this season of kind of with the pandemic and everything else is really forcing people to think differently and challenging people to think, okay, certain people, they've been in a position, they actually cannot do business the way that they used to anymore. Actually, they have to radically change their approach.
Oh yeah. Years ago, I read a really interesting book called The Automatic Customer. The Automatic Customer. It's a really good book. And the book introduces you to this idea of creating almost a subscription element to your business. So, for example, if you ran a cleaning, say you ran a business that was about mowing lawns for people, rather than showing up and mowing the lawn and saying, okay, can I have my fee, please, or £30 or whatever, you could, for example, think of your business from a perspective of a subscription business, where you say, well, actually, I will create something whereby you buy a recurring service from me, and whether you choose for me to come and mow your lawn or not, you are paying each month. You're paying £20, £30, £50 per month on a recurring basis. You know, you could apply this sort of thinking to whether you're running a florist business or whatever type of business you're running. You have to then start to ask yourself, if I generate my money mostly from a non-recurring basis, how do I start to generate maybe 25% of my revenues from a recurring source? Yeah. So a lot of what this current situation, this pandemic, should be forcing people to think about is how do I introduce more sticky revenue sources to my business? Yeah. How do I make my revenue more sticky? And how do I make a greater proportion of it more automated? So I think that's what people will need, because if a lot of people aren't doing that, then they might actually be left behind, because the way people are now thinking about life and thinking about how they consume and things like that is changing radically on the back of what's happened.
That's brilliant. So again, it's back to that kind of reassessment of the model and making sure that you've actually got consistent, I guess, dripping in income, over time, as opposed to that one big hit. Quite often people kind of want that big major sale or that one big contract. What you're suggesting is actually that model, the subscription model, is a very powerful model. It's been applied to so many successful businesses, where you're thinking about a small amount recurring, just continuously dripping in, and that it's there.
Exactly. So it's you essentially picking one product, but many people connected to that product also, because then it's funny, because that's actually a form of diversification.
Right. Yeah.
Investment principle, because essentially you are finding an interesting way of making sure that your revenue is adequately diversified, not just from a product perspective or service perspective, but diversified across lots of different people.
Brilliant. I love that. And I do feel that people will find that useful. Again, guys, if you're watching, type your questions in the comments. We're going to be asking Ken some questions in the Q&A section. But finally, I'd like to talk about investment. There's someone, a friend of the Honey Block, Mr. Robert Sadler, who is an investment teacher. He helps people to know where to invest. He has his thing. And I know that you do a very similar thing, with the Humble Penny. You're helping people. I want you to tell me a little bit about your journey, because you were working while you were studying, right? So you had a part-time job while you were studying. You still tried to apply these principles even from then. And, people might take for granted that you're kind of here, you're talking, just another guy with a business. This guy's been on Channel 4, people. This guy's been on the BBC. Just a few, not long ago, you're on Radio 4. You're always like in the media with all of this. So you've come quite a long way in a very short space of time. But you know, just the whole that journey of, yes, you've started a business, but actually, when did the realization come that you thought, okay, maybe I need to start investing now? And did you start learning about investment, or was that part of your course? Or just talk to us a little bit about that.
So my investing journey began in 2009/10. My career actually started, so lots of people who watching this might not know, but my career for the last 12 years, before I kind of took the leap to do my own thing, my career was mainly in investment management. So I'd worked mainly for essentially asset management companies that create the products that you and I might buy. So when I say products, I'm talking about things like ISAs and things like that. So products that we might invest our money into. So being in that environment exposed me to the kind of the thinking behind the scenes. So I got to meet lots and lots of different people who had built wealth over time. And it was very clear to me that people who built wealth over time either built their wealth from business, and when they built their wealth from business, they then diversified their wealth into other asset classes. They might put it into property, or they might put it into other assets such as companies, which is what we do when we invest through the stock market, or you might put it into other assets such as precious metals and things like that. So I'd come across these people, and it was very clear to me, and I came across them because when you're working in an asset management business, in my capacity as a senior finance professional, you get to meet people like that. You get to sit with them in the boardroom, you meet millionaires and billionaires. You have coffee with them, you have a tea with them, because you are in an environment where you are doing business. It became clear to me that for you to really build wealth over time, you don't really build wealth over time by purely swapping your time for money. That's not really going to work. For you to really build wealth over time, you need to outsource money making to assets. You need the assets to do the heavy lifting for you in your life, because assets can work 24/7. And better still, assets have no emotions. They don't decide one day that they're not really going to be making any money, but you might decide one day that you don't really feel like it. You don't really feel like investing. So for me, that mindset was necessary. That exposure to the right environment and to people was necessary for me to then start to do my own digging, which meant I started to read books. I started to go on meetups to meet other people who were doing the sort of things I wanted to do, to start to learn from them. I started to read blogs and go to events. I started to take one-to-one coaching, and all those things were necessary for me to start to build confidence around how I wanted to start to approach investing. So I started off investing in individual companies. The very first stock I bought was a company called BP. I bought their shares because my friends were buying it, and I thought, yeah, this would be an interesting thing to do, and it worked out quite well. But I then moved on to buying technology companies, Amazon, Google, companies like that, Facebook, Tesla, and I held those particular securities. But as I started to experience volatility in my investing, I started to seek out alternative ways to invest money. And given I worked in investment management, I understood how funds worked. So I started to invest my money into particular funds with a specific focus on passive investing as a particular strategy, which is where you essentially invest your money in a low-cost way, but giving yourself global exposure. And so my investing started much earlier than a lot of my peers. But what that has done was that I essentially invested my money at a time where, we'd come out of the 2008 crash, and the things were starting to build up again, and we experienced some of the biggest kind of bull markets we've seen in quite a while. And so money that we had put into investing had time to actually be exposed to the right type of assets and the right levels of risk for that money to then work over time. And as we made more money from other things such as business activities and things like that, we use the same principle that I'd come across, where you had to then take the money you'd made from one area and put it into other assets with the goal of diversifying your entire portfolio. So we'd go into, say, property investing as an area, for example. And from that, notice the movement from individual stocks to particular funds and things through the stock market, to then investing in business, to then investing in property, and then gradually moving on to other assets, like investing in digital businesses, like the Humble Penny is a digital asset that we own the IP for. We own the trademark, we own, all those things. And that asset in itself has value. Financial Joy Academy is a digital asset that we own. That asset has its own IP and so on, and its own products and services. So you notice the mindset really is the mindset of, the investing game is really about ROI thinking, i.e. the return on investment. Once I've started to build some wealth in one area, I want to diversify because I know that every asset class plays a different role within a portfolio. So stocks play a different role, properties play a different role, gold plays a different role, digital assets play a different role. But if I'm able to adequately balance wealth over these various assets, you essentially build a portfolio of assets that help you ultimately achieve your goals, which in my case were to generate enough capital growth over time whilst producing enough income from those assets to easily cover our expenses, which were dropping, by the way, whilst our wealth was going up, because we started to simplify our lifestyle and really focus on essentially not doing what most people were doing, but essentially doing life on our own terms. So that meant that the real margin we were building over time as wealth increases and expenses drop is huge enough, because that money therefore has enough of a capacity and enough essentially velocity and momentum to actually work in the marketplace, depending on where you put that money, for it to work over time.
Fantastic. And again, I'm going to give you a round of applause. I'm going to give you a tiger uppercut and a dragon punch, because that's fantastic. I love the fact that, and I think really this the caption there should be knowledge is power, because as you said, you learned from the industry, you learned from billionaires, you learned from people who were actually making investments and just how they thought, what they set up, etc. And I think without that knowledge, you can't just go into it. You can't really, yes, it's fine. Everybody can make an investment. Knowing what you're invested in and actually, again, when to come out or what, how to respond. Why you're investing. Yeah.
That's the most important. Because most people, here, look, I bought some stocks and shares, but what on earth does it mean? Like, what's it for? Like, that's why I keep talking about this idea of the North Star goal. What is the what's the whole point of investing your money? What's it for? I would say to people, don't invest your money at all unless you have a very clear goal. That's the only reason why you should invest your money. Because the whole point of investing is for money to work faster than you do in order for it to help you achieve a very specific goal. If you haven't got a goal, please don't invest your money, because it means you don't know what you're doing. So it really starts with the goal. And this is the bit where, most people just don't have any goals,
But this is it. But the thing is, a lot of the people that I come across, and it's really it's not necessarily through the experience that you've had, where you've learned from people, you're in the industry. People are in their own separate niche. They're in something totally different. They don't know investment terms. They don't know what they can invest in. They just hear that people have invested in. So, for example, big one, Bitcoin. As soon as Bitcoin came out, well, when it was popular, should I say, not when it came out, then people thought, I've heard of someone invested in Bitcoin. They've made a bit of money. Let me do the same thing. That's usually how the average person approaches investment. And the specificity of that goal comes from actually understanding what those markets are. What can be achieved from them, and the time frames that come with it. So again, you're speaking exactly like my friend Robert said. Look, he always says the same thing. It begins with your goal. What are you aiming to do? And then that determines what then you should be looking at. Because if you're expecting like a huge return in a short period of time, and you want your money back after a short period of time, that's very different from someone who is thinking, no, I've got some money, I'm going to leave it for a long period of time and expecting a certain amount of return. Again, it's what do you want out of it? And I love the fact, so just going back to what you said before, that you were actually focused on bringing your monthly spend down while all of those assets were going up. Love that. That's where that came from, because that's I love that.
Yeah, but that's that is a really important part of this journey, because otherwise, like, you'll forever be just chasing the wind if your expenses are always going up and your income's going up. It just doesn't make sense. It has to be that your expenses either almost stay mostly flat or they go down, which means you're really simplifying. Especially if you want to change the game for your, like, I mentioned I'm first generation. So if I really want to change the game, I have to be more radical than most people. I have to really do very unusual things, because that's the only way you get very unusual results. You have to be very, very different. And for me, I'm starting to see, I'm seeing the fruit in my own life now with my kids and, things like that. This is what we hope for: more families, people from our communities. We want more people to be able to say that, through their decision making and things like that about this subject of money, which is a critical subject, that the money has become the tool that's helped them achieve real life outcomes.
And so many things I could say. I'm aware of the time. I'm really grateful for everything that you've shared tonight, and I think that for people out there, in fact, let me get your contact details scrolling across the bottom while we talk, just so that people know how to reach you and how to connect with you, because I think it's so important to get that education. It's so important to learn and understand, because the questions that we often have, or the fear that we have, is based on lack of knowledge and experience and exposure, etc. So I really do love that. So I'm going to go to the questions that we have coming up in the comment section. So we have a question here from Grace. She's asking, did you have any experiences of any bad investments? And if so, what did you learn from them?
Cars are terrible investments.
Right.
I made a terrible investment, which is to spend money. I remember spending £21,000 on a car, and it's a wasting asset. It's a waste of money. What I learned was, don't put your money into wasting assets. Just put your money into things that will actually create value over time. You can own a car, obviously, but don't own a car because you want a nice car. We drive a Nissan Leaf, which is an electric car, but that car is a big part of the life that we're trying to create, which is a life where we're living in here. We're trying to promote more energy efficiency at home, less reliance on having to spend on petrol and things like that. Again, this is all tied into this whole idea of trying to create a life that really works for us. So yeah, that's what I learned from that experience.
Excellent, thank you. Let's deal with Bart's question next. Bart is asking, how do you suggest we make regular connections with people like you who have this kind of growth / investment mindset? Okay,
two things. So first is pay for coaching with people. Go and find somebody who you like, who you think you buy into their life philosophy. Go and just pay for their time and get to know them. What you're getting by doing that is two things. You're getting knowledge and you're getting a life relationship. Okay? I did this and I still do it today. Okay? Second thing is find an environment where the people who are within that environment are of the sort of mindset that you seek out. It could be a mastermind. So I'll give you an example. I'm part of two masterminds, one with a bunch of US influencers, people who I admire, people who I like, and one here in the UK. And then we run Financial Joy Academy, where we're creating an environment for people to have this particular mindset, because we know that mindset is critical for accountability. It's critical for you taking action. It's critical for you gaining confidence and things like that. So my advice to you is seek coaching for someone you like, someone you potentially trust, someone you buy into their philosophy, or find an environment of people who have that mindset that you're seeking.
Fantastic. And I would say, Bart, as well, subscribe to Edgeway Education emails, because we have a huge network of people who may suit your specific niche, and we can tie you into them for your coaching needs as well. And connect with Ken. Look at his details at the bottom there. Connect to them. Connect with him. Let's go to Joyce now. Joyce has a question. She asked, where would you say someone in the UK should start building their assets?
Start online. Start online. Start today. Start a blog. Ask yourself this, Focus, I would say, focus on building digital assets. See, I'll give you an example, really practical. We have a nursery business, where we, nurseries for children. We've got 3 branches as a family. So not just me, my wife, my sisters, my parents. That business has one major problem. It has fixed capacity. Okay, so each building, you can only have X number of children, maybe 50 kids, 100 kids, which means your revenue is capped. But if you start a digital business, there is no cap in your revenue. The cap, in fact, there is no cap at all. You essentially can decide how much money you want to make depending on what it costs you to acquire a customer. This is the beauty of online digital businesses, is that you have no fixed capacity. So in terms of where should you start investing, I'd say start building a digital business, okay? And then obviously outside of that, you can start to invest through the stock market. This is a good time to do that, particularly if you've got a long-term horizon. And then you can explore other assets as well. But these 2 particular things I've mentioned, there are other assets I could talk about, but these 2 of digital businesses and investing through the stock market are critical, because the digital business, for most of them, they're actually low cost to get started, but the potential for high returns are very high. And with investing through the stock market, if you put your money in the right environment, you stand essentially to have a good level of diversification, but exposing your money passively to assets in global environments. You can do it from the UK, here in the UK, but invest, say, in the US equities market, or invest globally in emerging markets, or a combination of US equities markets, emerging markets, and so on. The key there is that you're putting your money to work in an environment where your money then works for you over time. Then as you start to build wealth and gain experience and confidence in these areas and learn very interesting skill sets. Those are very key skill sets. Investing through the stock market is a very important skill set. Building digital assets takes you outside your comfort zone, but really teaches you skills that are skills for tomorrow. Because in 10 years' time, those skills will be relevant.
Excellent, fantastic. The questions are coming in thick and fast. I'm going to take 2 more, and then we're going to have to close. And I apologize to those people who haven't had their question answered. But here's a question from Julian. He's saying, as a qualified accountant, is it better to have a side hustle as a freelance accountant, or is it better to invest in assets?
Okay, that's an interesting question, because for you to invest in assets, you need money to do that. If you've got the time, I'd say definitely freelance using your existing skill sets. But better than that, think about how you can package your skill as an accountant such that your skill then sells on autopilot. I.e., can you package that into a digital course? Can you create a membership program? Can you create ebooks and so on? Things essentially that can sell on the go. And what you want to do with that is create a sales system that helps us sell that process and sell that product or service on autopilot. So you're not just swapping your time for money, but you've put that time into a specific asset, i.e. a digital product, and that product therefore then sells over time. And as you make that money, you then want to do what you said earlier, which is to invest in assets such as you may be investing through the stock market.
Brilliant. And Julian, if you need help with that, contact us at Edgeway Education. We'll help you get through a lean canvas and sort out all of the detail and get you started with it. And actually, I do not mind helping with some of the digital online content creation. I actually know this guy, so this is why I'm saying this. So
okay.
Yeah, get in touch.
Okay, cool.
Okay, I'll take one last one from Joyce. She's got a few more, actually. Let me choose this one. Okay, let's end on this note. Did you meet your wife before you started building your investment/assets? What would you encourage people starting on their journey on their own? So how do you encourage people to start on their journey?
Yeah, so when I met my wife, I hadn't started the journey in the way I would have liked. I was still starting off. I just qualified actually as a chartered accountant. 2008 when I qualified. Met my wife in 2009 in October. So I just started the journey. I basically started to get a decent salary and stuff like that. So we started a journey together. Okay, and said, would you encourage people to start on a journey on their own? Yes, start, because the real asset you've got is time. So you don't want that time to kind of pass you by. You want to start as quickly as you can. And then hopefully you meet somebody, if you haven't got a partner already, who is of the same mindset. In fact, you will attract the right person, because kind of like tends to attract like, essentially.
Brilliant. Well, Ken, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom. I would be very happy to have you back in the future if you were happy to do so. I like my finance gurus because, again, I'm very passionate about people increasing their financial literacy and understanding what they need to do next. And we have a response here saying, good answer from Julian. And there's a lot of appreciation from the people that are watching as well. So thank you, sir, so much. Hang on there. I'm going to speak to you in a moment after the live has ended. But thank you so much for joining us today.
No, I appreciate it. Just want to thank everybody who basically watched this. Thank you guys so much. Really, really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for hanging out with us and watching.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ken. So, my goodness me, people, have you enjoyed today's session? If you found it useful, share it with your friends. Tell your family. Get yourselves sorted out financially. Get to understand some of this terminology around investments. Don't be in the dark anymore. Get yourself a plan. Get your business plan as a well-oiled machine so that you know where the levers are to crank it up in one direction or another. But I hope that you all have liked this. So we had good answer from Julian. We have thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Awesome from Paul Morrison. We have thank you again from Joyce. I know there's so many of you that are grateful for receiving this. So guys, I really am all about helping you guys to have value each week. And again, we have another session this Thursday of Forex 101. Who've we got this week on Forex 101? We have none other than Mr. Akil from the United States. He is a Forex trader. He is a Forex trainer as well. So he's going to be talking to us about his knowledge of the foreign exchange markets. But good people, my goodness me, I love these sessions. I love bringing them to you despite having the crazy day that I've had. Guys, share, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Join us in the Honey Block in Facebook, and we have extra discussions and other content around building your brand, building your business, learning to invest, and also, of course, as per usual, understanding how to actually trade and make money in the foreign exchange market. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Have yourselves a good night, and we'll see you next time in the Honey Block on Tuesday Night Live, and join us as well for Forex 101. Take care. God bless.